The Seattle rain was less of a downpour and more of a persistent, melancholic mist, a constant presence that had become the soundtrack to Alistair and Julia's life. It wasn't a bad sound, just a quiet one that swallowed up other noises, leaving behind a silence that was growing harder to ignore. Alistair sat at his home office desk, bathed in the cool glow of his 3-monitor setup, the cascading green and white lines of his coat a familiar comfort. He was a software architect, a builder of digital worlds, and he liked things to be logical, predictable, and clean. Their life with Julia was like that, or so he thought. A beautifully designed home in Capitol Hill, a perfect view of the water, and a shared calendar that meticulously tracked their perfectly parallel lives. He was running a routine check of their shared accounts, a habit born of an almost obsessive need for order. It was a digital fingerprint of their life together, and he noticed a small anomaly. A recent charge from an upscale Seattle boutique, a place that sold expensive camera equipment and artisanal goods. The receipt was for a lens. Not just any lens, but a rare, vintage one he knew could fetch thousands. He didn't remember Julia mentioning it, and a purchase of that size was something they always discussed. He dismissed it as a gift for a client, perhaps. But the line of code had been written. The variable had been set. Later that week, while organizing a bookshelf, he found an old journal of Julia's. She was a landscape artist, and her journals were usually filled with sketches of trees and mountains and the gray Seattle sky. But this one was different. He flipped through it, not with the intention of snooping, but of finding a loose pen. He saw a page with a quick, charcoal sketch of a man, his face half obscured, but with a distinctive, swirling tattoo on his wrist. Julia had written a single word beneath it, Leo. The drawing was raw, passionate, a stark contrast to the meticulous landscapes she usually produced. Alistair's heart, a thing he usually trusted to tick along with the same rhythm as his code, skipped a beat. A new, unsettling line of thought opened up, a query he couldn't stop himself from running. He pulled out his phone and opened the shared family calendar. Every Friday for the last 2 months was marked as, Art Commission, out of town. Just a simple, logical note. But he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the distance between them wasn't just about miles. The quiet was no longer a comfort. It was a lie. The quiet doubt that had haunted Alistair had now transformed into a methodical, focused investigation. He wasn't acting out of anger, but out of a programmer's need to find the bug in the system. The charge for the camera lens, the mysterious journal entry with the name Leo, and the distinct tattoo, and the repeated Friday excursions. They were all data points that didn't align. Late one night, while Julia was sleeping, he performed a search on the internet using the name Leo, and the keywords Seattle, photographer, and tattoo. It was a simple query, but the results were instantaneous. A professional website for a local photographer named Leo Vance popped up. His work was stunning, raw, and full of life, the kind of art that felt alive. A gallery on his site showed a portrait series titled The Muses, and in the photos, Alistair saw it. The same swirling tattoo on his wrist, just like in Julia's sketch. Alistair felt a knot tighten in his gut. This was it, the logical connection. He then remembered a small, obscure app they'd downloaded together years ago, a location-sharing app they'd forgotten about. He logged in, his fingers moving with a practiced, almost inhuman speed. The app showed their location history, a timeline of their lives laid out on a digital map. He filtered the data by the dates Julia had been on her art commissions. The map lit up with a pattern of dots. Not random, but concentrated around a specific, remote area of the Olympic Peninsula and a particular neighborhood in Seattle. The locations were not public parks or art studios, they were private residences and a rustic cabin. His final query was the most brutal. He cross-referenced the dates and locations with Leo Vance's social media. He found it, a small, hidden profile under a different name, with posts and images from those exact dates and places. There, on a digital timeline, was a picture of Julia. Not a professional portrait, but a candid shot of her laughing, wrapped in a fleece blanket on the porch of the cabin he had seen on the map. Her expression was radiant, relaxed, and so completely unlike the person she had become at home. It was a single, devastating photo, but it contained a universe of truth. The proof wasn't in a receipt or a text message. It was in the data he had collected, the digital trail of a life lived outside of his. He sat there, the light from the monitors reflecting in his eyes, feeling nothing. His hypothesis had been confirmed. The bug had been found. Their marriage was a logical impossibility. The photo on the screen felt like a physical object, a brick thrown through the window of Alistair's perfectly ordered life. He sat motionless for another hour, the glow from the monitor illuminating the stark reality of his wife's betrayal. He didn't feel rage, or even profound sadness. He felt a chilling sense of clarity, the kind a programmer gets when a complex bug is finally fixed. The problem wasn't his code, it was the entire system. The next morning was a carefully managed performance. He made coffee, ate breakfast, and even discussed a mundane work issue with Julia as if nothing were wrong. But the warmth was gone from his voice, replaced by a monotone he couldn't hide. She noticed, but seemed to attribute it to work stress. The chasm between them had never felt wider. He waited until after dinner. Julia was on the couch, sketching in her journal, her phone resting on the end table. Alistair walked over and sat down across from her, not on the couch beside her. The distance was deliberate. "I need to show you something," he said, his voice quiet and firm. Julia's hand froze. She looked up, her eyes betraying a flicker of unease. He picked up his tablet and, with a few precise taps, pulled up the photo from the hidden social media account, the picture of her laughing on the porch of the cabin. Her face drained of all color. The pencil in her hand clattered to the floor. She stared at the image, her expression a mix of shock and dawning horror. "I didn't just find this," Alistair said, his voice a dispassionate echo in the quiet room. "I cross-referenced the photo's EXIF data. The GPS coordinates. They match the location of that cabin you've been going to. I also checked our old location sharing app. The data lines up perfectly with your out-of-town art commissions." He paused, letting the cold, hard facts sink in. "And Leo, the photographer. He's doing a new installation at my office. I'm on the planning committee. Did you know that?" Julia's tears began to fall, silent at first, then a choked sob. "Alistair, I can explain." He shook his head. "Don't. The data doesn't lie. I don't need an explanation. I have the facts." His revenge was not fueled by anger, but by a chilling logic. He was a software architect. When a system is compromised, you don't try to fix it, you rebuild it from the ground up, and you remove the corrupted parts. His marriage, his life with her, was compromised beyond repair. The gala was a kaleidoscope of shimmering lights and muted conversation, a glittering testament to Seattle's wealth and tech-driven ambition. It was the perfect stage. Alistair, dressed in a sharp suit, moved through the crowd with a chilling calm, a man on a mission. Julia was there, and so was Leo. They stood together near Leo's new installation, a stunning series of photographs of the Cascades, all rendered in a breathtaking, almost ethereal light. Alistair noticed the small, secret smiles they shared, unaware that the system was about to crash. He waited for the CEO of his company, a man he had worked with for years, to stand before the crowd and begin his speech. As the CEO praised Leo's work and his artistic vision, Alistair made his move. He didn't interrupt. He simply walked to a large digital screen nearby, one he had coded himself for the event's presentation. With a few keystrokes on his phone, he accessed the screen's back end. The projected images of the Cascade Mountains suddenly flickered, replaced by a meticulously compiled slideshow. The photos were from Leo's secret profile. A stunned silence fell over the room as the crowd saw the candid, intimate images, Julia laughing on the porch of the cabin, her face filled with an uninhibited joy they never saw in her public life. The final slide was a series of screenshots, the location data from Julia's phone, the cross-referenced hotel receipts, and the final, damning screenshot of the tattoo and a single word in Julia's journal, Leo. Alistair didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The CEO's face was a mask of disbelief. The murmur of the crowd grew into a shocked whisper. Julia stood frozen, her face ashen, her eyes fixed on the screen, a public exhibition of her private betrayal. Leo's face was a study in pure panic. Alistair simply walked away, leaving the digital evidence to do the talking. The following days were a blur of lawyers, terse conversations, and the cold, unfeeling finality of divorce papers. Julia's artistic reputation was shattered in the tight-knit Seattle community, and Leo's career was over before it could truly begin. Alistair's revenge was not about anger, it was about the logic of consequences. When you introduce a virus into a system, you don't just delete it. You rebuild the system from scratch and make sure everyone knows what happened to the last one. The final scene shows Alistair in his now empty home, the space a blank canvas waiting for a new code. He is alone, but there is no sadness. He has won. The problem has been solved. The system is clean.